Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our next session. My name is Valerie Martinez, and I'm the coordinator for the Multicultural Department here in Osceola County. And I have my crowd here. Thank you, thank you. Tonight, I would like to present your featured session with José Viana. President Trump named José Viana Assistant Deputy Superintendent, Secretary, and Director of the Office of English Language Acquisition, OELA, on April 12, 2017. He is the principal advisor to Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos on all matters related to the education of English learners, now estimated to be about 10% of the total K-12 public school enrollment nationwide. As head of OELA, Viana administers programs under Title III of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which support high-quality instruction for linguistically and culturally diverse students. The office also supports professional development programs for teachers of English learners. Viana is committed to ensuring improvement in English language education through the department's initiatives. Under his stewardship, Viana will guide OELA towards realizing its mission and vision to provide national leadership in EL education by advancing opportunities for educational excellence and equity for English learners and their families. Prior to joining the department, Viana served for 8 years as an administrator of the Migrant Education Program for North Carolina's Department of Public Instruction. The mission of that program is to help migrant students and youth meet high academic standards by overcoming obstacles due to frequent moves, educational disruption, cultural and linguistic differences, and health-related problems. During that time, Viana also served as the vice chair of the governing board for the North Carolina Farm Workers Health Program. Viana began his career in Miami-Dade County Public Schools as an elementary school teacher for English language learners, and later was a humanities instructor at an International Baccalaureate World School. The International Baccalaureate organization aims to develop knowledgeable young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. Concurrently, Viana prepared and delivered general teaching skills sessions to Florida International University's undergraduate students receiving a Bachelor of Science degree in education in all levels and content areas. After acquiring his certification in educational leadership in 2006, Viana became an elementary school administrator for Durham, North Carolina Public Schools, where he established the district-wide Title I Parent Advisement Committee for Hispanics to ensure that Latino children from low-income families met challenging state academic standards. Viana is a second-generation Cuban immigrant who started his primary years as an English language learner. The magnificent teacher he encountered in his early learning inspired him to become an educator. Viana has devoted his life to improving educational opportunities for minority populations and is honored to serve our nation's English learners and their families. Viana and his wife, Amy, the executive director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, have 3 children. Viana also manages to find time in the evenings to prepare high school students from China to test of English as a foreign language. Please welcome this evening, Mr. José Viana. And on behalf of the NABE board as well, we would like to present to you, and of course we have so many papers on this, right? Out of dedication, an award of dedication for Mr. Viana. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. It's funny, I'm here with my 10-year-old daughter. My other daughter had something, and of course I've got a baby, so I was like, it would probably be a little distracting if I was to bring him along. But anyway, she's walking around with me, and she's like, wow, your name is like on all these places. It's like you're famous or something. It's really cute. I always like to start off with just a few words, if you'll bear with me, before I get into the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint isn't too long, but I think you'll enjoy some of the updates that I have to share. So I want to begin by thanking you for the opportunity to share some of OELA's updates, and also welcome the chance to applaud the important mission of NABE, its state affiliates, and his members. All of us participating in this conference contribute to lifelong learning and lifelong success for bilingual and multilingual students. NABE and its partners raise awareness about the value of language and cultural skills. These causes, which NABE has championed since 1975, are the ones we share at the Department of Education. Empowering states and communities to provide all students with a world-class education is central to this administration's agenda. And Americans who speak more than one language are an incredible asset for our country and communities. Secretary DeVos recently had said, cultural intelligence is a broadly transferable skill that helps our students and our country to succeed, compete, and collaborate in an increasingly interconnected world. And it's impossible to truly understand a culture without first understanding its language. Students who are competent in 2, 3, 4 languages are better prepared for every turn of their careers and lives. Not long ago, I had an experience that made the Secretary's case in everyday terms. I was catching a flight, and there was this couple from China. They were an older couple, and the wife was crying. She was very emotional, and you could tell they were a little confused, and the flight attendant was trying to talk to them, doing that old practice of talking English in a really slow way, thinking that that'll connect with them. But they just weren't understanding. And I can tell by the conversation what was happening was they didn't understand what a connecting flight was. They had a note from their daughter. They were meeting their daughter in Indiana. She went to school there, but they were connecting in D.C., and they just couldn't understand the process. All of a sudden, this teenager takes off his headphones and listens for a little while, and he gets up and starts talking to them in fluent Mandarin. Just your typical, high school teenager. He explained to them about the flight and that it's a connecting flight. He even drew them a little picture of how this works and where to go, to the gate and where their daughter will be. And finally, they understood, and they were hugging him and so grateful and thankful. And then, of course, he just sits down again, puts his headphones on, and just goes back to his music and stuff. I couldn't let this go by, so I moved over and I sat by him for a little while, and we talked. And it just so happens that his high school had a dual language immersion program, and through conversation I had learned that he had already entered with some companies that do work with China. He had, his whole life set for him. He had several colleges that have already accepted him, and he was well on his way. And this is a kid, he basically told me, I would have never thought I was going to be speaking Mandarin earlier in my life. So I tried to tell the student what a magical thing he had done. He had not only made that couple's day, but with one interaction, he shaped their impression of America. He bridged 2 countries and cultures, and he represented our nation in a powerful way. I was so excited about the future, about what his future held and the edge he had gained for his life. But it's funny, talking to him it was just normal, So, I speak a second language. It's no big deal. And I thought to myself at that moment, what if that was true for all our kids in this country? All our students had access to the types of opportunities he had, and many more Americans spoke multiple languages. It's an opportunity that all our students deserve, regardless of their background or circumstance. It's time to empower educators, parents, and civic leaders and other partners, people like you, with the freedom and the flexibility to create educational approaches tailored to the needs of individual children. And I'd like to share with you some information about OELA and the ways that we have been advancing these goals. So first let me tell you a little bit about OLA, because not everybody knows what it is that we do. So OLA's functions is we provide national leadership to ensure that English learners and immigrant students attain English proficiency and achieve academic success. We have robust policy discussions with Secretary DeVos and the other offices at the Department of Ed. We also offer 3 discretionary grants. So these are grants that you can compete for. The National Professional Development Grant is a large discretionary grant. We give about $42 million annually to this grant, and it supports professional development for educators to support English learners. It's awarded to institutions of higher education in consortia with state educational agencies and local educational agencies. The Native American and Alaskan Native Children in School grant, we call it the NAME grant, we give about $5 million annually to this grant. And this is very similar. It supports the teaching and learning and studying of English language and gaining that proficiency for our Native American children, but it also supports teaching, learning, and studying of Native American languages. I'm sure you're aware that a lot of these languages are becoming extinct. Many of them are not even written. So these grants assist with that. And then our D2 grant, our Asian American Pacific Islander Data Disaggregation Initiative, we give about $1 million annually to this grant, and it supports the disaggregation, collection, and analysis of data for English learners who are Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So it's an interesting subpopulation where the data is a little skewed because of our students from China, our students from India. You can't compare them to some of the other students from like Vietnam or Somalia and other places. So what they're doing is working on how to disaggregate this data. And by the end of this grant, we should have a written report, and it's something that then can be used for other ethnic groups as well. Hopefully, it'll give us a lot of insight into how to disaggregate data. We also provide national evaluation activities, so a lot of research. We do a lot of studies and reports. We provide a lot of resources like toolkits and guides, and I'll share some of those with you. As far as funding, some people like to hear, so we are flat funded. So for the past 5 years, we've received the same funding for our Title III students. So it's about $740 million. We've had some robust discussions. As a matter of fact, our next appropriations, we've been asked by the White House to cut another 10% from the Department of Ed. So it's been a tug of war trying to make sure that at least we get the funding. And it's tough, and you have to keep reminding everyone that it's a growing population. It's not only a growing population, but a very diverse population. So we're working on making sure that we have the funds necessary to work with our Title III students. So now for some of the fun part. So who are our English learners, our bilingual, multilingual students? In OLA, when I first joined, we had access to all this data. We had stacks and stacks of data. And I thought, what do we do with all this data? Just sit around? And so I pushed for putting together these data stories, using the data to provide it in a way where it's accessible and easy to understand. So we created these data stories, and they're basically websites that are interactive, and you can see the different information in these different categories. So I've been able to get funding for 4 data stories. So far we've created 3 data stories, and we've done the hard work now, and we'll be updating the data as we get it. So right now this is 2015, 2016 data. But we've got 3 categories: our nation's English learners, and it's basically information about the characteristics and location of our English learners. Then our other data story is the educational experiences of our English learners. And it's basically an examination of their access and enrollment in preschool, advanced coursework in high school, and their access to college preparatory courses. And then there's a third one that focuses on their academic performance, so graduation rates, their performance on national exams. Now these are current English learners, so we don't have the data for those who have exited. So it doesn't tell the full story, but at least you get an idea. Let me pull up one so you can take a look. So you can see, got our nation's English learners, and little introduction, some information. You can see, I'm sorry, because it's not, I can't. Oh, here we go. Okay. So it's interactive. As you move to each section, the information pops up. So for example, our Hispanic students, they're 77% of our English learners, over 3,700,000 students. Compared to all our students, you can see the Hispanic community. Same thing with our Asian, so it breaks it down into their ethnic groups. Where are they located? Let me show you the map. I don't want to spend too much time. So here you have a map, and again, it's interactive, so you can go to your county or your district and get information as to how many students, for example, in Nevada, in Elko County, there were over 1,000 English learners compared to the total number of students, which is over 9,000. 11% of the students there are English learners. So you can go all around to the different counties. And this is data from 2014, 2015. There's also, again, interactive, so you can see the percentage changed for the past few years. So you can hover over certain counties and see how the population has changed of English learners. Go to languages spoken. And this is broken up by states. And again, you can hover over the different categories, and you can see, like, for example, in Arkansas, Spanish is spoken by 81% of the English learners. So you can kind of just go around and hover and see. So again, very interactive, very useful. What we've noticed is a lot of our local schools and districts have been using this data to even formulate arguments for more funding and for more services for our English learners. And again, kind of similar with the other two data stories, so please check them out. I think they're very informative and very helpful, and the data's nice and easy to understand. Now, our data stories are one of the many resources that we have available. If you go to our OELA website, we have some other different resources, some studies and materials that are available to those of you working with English learner students and students, bilingual and multilingual students. So for example, EdTech for English learners is a toolkit for educators. It offers guiding principles for practitioners to apply in exploring new ways of working with and supporting their English learners through technology. And there's also a toolkit for developers, and it provides them the guidance on the needs of English learners and their educators. What we basically had noticed was that there was a gap, that teachers were telling us the technology is just not effective. So we brought teachers together with developers and had them go at it for a little while, and we were able to produce this guide. Let's see if I can pull it up. We also have, you'll see, a study on English learners for gifted and talented program. Despite the growing numbers of English learners, their representation in gifted and talented programs continues to lag behind. I think we're somewhere around 2% of our English learners are identified as gifted and talented compared to 7% of non-English learners. So this underrepresentation was something that caught our attention. We created this study which also provides some guidelines on ways teachers can identify and enroll students, English learner students, in gifted and talented programs. And then there's a study on dual language ed programs, and it's great because it's got state policies and practices. It's got what we at the department consider to be the definition for dual language programs. This is an older report. It was 2015, so we will be revisiting it and updating it. But it's, I think, something that can be of use to all of you. So this is our website, and along the side where it says what's new, that's where you can go to our different studies and guides. Let me pull up one of them so you can take a look. So our study on English learners for gifted and talented programs, it's pretty simple. Let me see, I wanted to show you the guide. So one of the things I tried to do is make sure that we always have something practical that we can either give the teachers or those working with our English learners. You know what, I think it's actually, I'm sorry, let's see. Oh, here it is, the tips, I'm sorry. I clicked on the study. So the study is about 54 pages, so that's good nighttime reading. But here's some of the tips so you can take a look. 15 tips for identifying English learner students. And it's pretty simple. I think it's a 2-pager. And it talks about adopting universal screening procedures, create alternative pathways to identification, establish a web of communication, and so on. So it's very useful and I think very practical. And that really came up, it was pretty interesting. We had one of my staff members had talked about when he was young. Most of the people on my staff were former English learners, and he had talked about how when he was young, he would always wonder why he couldn't be with those kids that would go to the other room and do all these interesting things because he felt he can do them. And his mom advocated for him, and he got tested, and he was gifted and talented. And that became a conversation we had with teachers and parents and students throughout the nation, and realized that it was an issue. So check it out. Go to our website, and you can see some of the things that we have developed. We also have a clearinghouse for English language acquisition and SELA. And here we've got a lot of great information. We've got some fast facts, and these are 2-pagers. If you go to our booth, you can see some of them. They've been very effective, especially when we're out talking to districts and school leaders about our English learners. We have these fast facts. The secretary loves them. We give them, she goes through them all the time because they're just quick, practical information on key data for English learners. We also have our Nexus, which is a semi-monthly newsletter, so please register for that so you can get kind of the latest events and information and materials that we have available. It provides topics relevant to supporting our English learners. We have our newcomer toolkit. It's very popular. So that's a toolkit for our English learners who have just arrived to this country. And it's very helpful for those working with newly arrived students. And it has different topics like who are our newcomers, welcoming them to a safer and thriving school environment, high quality instructions for our newcomers, and how we support their social and emotional needs, and also how to establish partnerships with families. So it's very useful. And then our English Learner Toolkit, which is more of a general look at English learners. It helps states and local education agencies fulfill the legal obligations to serve their English learners. And different topics: identifying our English learners, providing a language assistance program, staffing and support, creating an inclusive environment, monitoring them, evaluating the effectiveness of the program, ensuring meaningful conversations with families, lots of good stuff. So let me pull it up so you can take a look at some of the things. And I'm not sure how we can get this PowerPoint available to you, but I know I had spoken with Nilda, and she had talked about getting access for all of you. So let me pull up some of the fast facts just so you can take a look. So you can see over here the different categories. English learners who are Arab Americans, for example, English learners in charter schools, language spoken by our English learners, English learners who are Hispanic and Latino, so different categories, career and tech readiness, different profiles. Let me see, I'll pull up the languages. This is one most people like to see. And again, it's a 2-pager. It's got some fun facts. And here you can see the breakdown of our English learners and the different languages spoken. You can see the top 5, which switches around a little bit every now and then. Chinese was on top of Arabic for a while, and now it swapped places. And we had Haitian on top of Somali for a while, and that also swapped. So it's great to see the dynamic and how it changes. So there you got our fast facts, sources for English learner data. Here we got some of the resources, like our English learner toolkit, which you can pull up. It's a PDF file, so it's got tons of information. It's been very useful, especially in those places that this is a new phenomenon, and they're trying to figure out how to serve our English learners. So it's been very useful. We got information on all our different programs and grants, and here's the Encela Nexus, which I encourage you to sign up for, and you can get some of the latest information that we have at the department. I'm also excited to show you one of our latest toolkits that has just come out, and it's our English Learner Family Toolkit. So we have a toolkit for our newcomers, a toolkit for English learners in general, and that's mainly for those working with English learners. This is for our parents. So as Valerie had mentioned before, I spent many years running the migrant education program out in North Carolina. These are migratory students. They'll move 3 or 4 times during a school year. And we always had issues, especially with enrollment and transferring transcripts and those kinds of things. Sometimes schools not even enrolling students because of lack of documentation and things like that. So a lot of times I spent most of my time in North Carolina with the migrant ed program driving over to schools, making sure that our kids would get enrolled and showing them what the law states. So when I joined the Office of English Language Acquisition, my wife and the kids stayed in North Carolina. They were finishing up school and stuff, and I was starting at the department. And I had to find their school and get their documentations in order and get them enrolled and all of that. And it was such an incredible challenge. And I speak English, and I'm an educator. So it's what I tell parents. I can only imagine what it's like to be in your shoes. So one of the first things that I wanted to do was this, the English Learner Family Toolkit, a way of empowering our parents. So it's got the purpose of our English Learner Family Toolkit is to promote English learner student achievement and foster educational excellence. It ensures that every English learner has the opportunity to obtain a high-quality education. It supports EL families in choosing educational services to meet their child's needs, and it provides EL families with information about questions that they may have about the public schools in the United States. We have it in English, obviously, and we also have it in Mandarin, Chinese, Arabic, and Spanish. So those are, as I showed you before, the top 3 languages right now. That's that's the only funding we have so far. But we have, as a matter of fact, I met with some folks from Illinois, and they have a huge Polish community. So they've had some of their local folks help them translate the toolkit into Polish. So, you know, maybe there can be some local efforts to help us with this. Now, some of the topics addressed in the toolkit, and again, these are the areas that we felt were of value, is enrolling your child in school, attending schools in the United States, obtaining services for English learners, finding additional services for your child, like children with special needs, gifted and talented, finding additional services for your child, keeping your child safe and healthy in school, and helping your child with schoolwork at home. Now, some states and some school districts have something similar, but this is, what's neat about this is that it's a federal perspective. And it gives some, it's again, very simple, very practical. It gives some general information. It then gets into the family and students' rights and school responsibilities. And then it gives either somewhere between 10 to 15 questions to ask school staff, and also some tips for the parents. And then a little area where there's resources available. So it's very practical, it's very user-friendly. Right now it's in a PDF file, so unfortunately that's the only way to access it right now. You go to the website and pull it up. A lot of local areas, what they've been doing is printing them out for their families. We are hoping to get it on an app. So we've been working with the department, and with our we've been contracting with a group to put it in an app form, because that's what the parents had told us would be more practical for them, that they could just punch it up when they're in school and have the questions there for them to ask. What's been neat is that the questions have not only been useful for the parents and the families, but when we've showed them to school staff, they've also found it pretty valuable. And sometimes they've even told us, we don't know the answers to some of these questions. So it's been very valuable. And here's an example on the first topic, which deals with enrolling students in school. Some of the questions that we came up with, we've had roundtables with parents, and I basically told them, if you knew now what you knew then, if you knew then what you know now, what would you have asked? What would you have asked about? So you can see some of the sample questions that have been developed. And again, they're simple, they're to the point, but they empower the parents to make sure that they're asking the right questions. So check out all our resources, but also I want you to make sure you stay connected with us. So we have the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. They work with the formula grants when it comes to English learners, and they also have a link with guidance and information, rules and regulations and so on having to do with our English learners. So make sure you connect with them, the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Also with us on Facebook, you can follow us on Facebook or like us on Facebook. I started a Twitter page, and I've been trying to post some of the things that pass through my desk, visits that I go to, and things that I've been encountering on my visits. And then we've got Encella on Twitter as well, our national clearinghouse, so you can follow them as well on Twitter and get information through that. We have a multiliteracy symposium coming up at the Department of Education, and I invite all of you to attend. You can attend remotely through the internet, or you can physically visit us and spend some time with us. We're basically celebrating the diverse linguistic and cultural assets of all our students. It's our English Learner Multiliteracy Symposium. We're going to have lots of great sessions. One session basically just general on our English learner landscape, our bilingual education landscape. We will also be focusing on the impact of bilingualism and multilingualism from specialists from other departments, like the Department of Labor, the Department of Justice, and so on. So lots of great information. We'll have lots of great breakout sessions with state examples. One of my biggest things is making sure that you all are aware of some of the best practices that are out there. And we have a whole office dedicated to that. So please put this on your calendar and see if you can join us on May 6th and spend some time with us talking about our bilingual and multilingual students. We also have a booth. I think it's booth 300. So if you visit the exhibit hall, you can see some of our toolkits and fast facts and things like that, and you can pick some of those things up as well. So, thank you so much for giving me some time to tell you a little bit about OELA and some of the things that we have available to all of you. Really, spend some time clicking around and looking at our stuff. We really have very practical, very user-friendly resources for those of you working with our English learners, our multilingual and bilingual students. And I just want to share some closing thoughts. The work we share is a personal calling for all of us, and I've been thinking a lot about the impact of our efforts when I spend time with my baby son. So we speak to him in Spanish. We speak to all our children in Spanish. And little Joey, he's 16 months old, and we even sing to him in Spanish. And the other day, it's funny, my wife was singing an old Cuban lullaby, and it's kind of one of those silly songs where it's basically a mom singing to her child, saying, if you fall asleep, I'll give you this. If you fall asleep, I'll give you that. And she, gives him all these options. And finally she says, if you don't fall asleep, I'm just going to have to spank you. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, my 13-year-old goes, Mom, that's a terrible song. And my wife was like, well, tell me about, what is it, Rockabye Baby? You guys, they put the baby on top of a tree and on a branch. And she goes, it's not, and my daughter was like, yeah, it's not that bad. But the important thing is that she's giving Joey the gift of language. Gift of language, the gift of culture, a gift that deserves to be passed and preserved. And I've realized, I've been doing this for 2 years, so not very long, but sharing this with all of you and spending time with all of you and listening to all of you, I've realized that it's not just a gift, it's his right. It's his right to know his first language. It's his right to maintain his Spanish and his culture. And it's a right that all our students should have. And, we'll raise Joey to speak English and Spanish, and maybe we'll find there's lots, in the DC area, there's lots of dual language schools. So who knows, maybe he'll learn Mandarin like the teenager that I met on the airplane. And he'll be able to contribute to a thriving economy and an interconnected society. He'll be able to reach everyone, from loved ones to strangers, with words that they can understand, with words that comfort fear, communicate respect, strengthen understanding, and build bridges. And these are my hopes for my 3 children. I got my middle child in the back there today. And for all bilingual students and families, I know these are your hopes for your children too. I want to share a quote by Nelson Mandela. Without language, one cannot talk to people and understand them. One cannot share their hopes and aspirations, grasp their history, appreciate their poetry, or savor their songs. And that's just part of the power of what all of you do. You bring communication and understanding to our children, classrooms, and communities. You enable students and families to shape their hopes and goals into words and share them and achieve them. And you give each learner the most basic building blocks of success: how to think, speak, write, create, and collaborate in ways that will strengthen our society and grow our economy and keep our country thriving for generations. So thank you. Thank you for shaping America's future. Thank you for pouring out your hearts each day for all the young people in our schools. I know that you won't rest until all our students experience great teaching, and together we can take bilingual education to the next level. We can rethink education. We can give more Americans the skills and tools to build a bright future for our nation and the world. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to share some of my wonderful office with all of you. I know it's kind of late in the day, and you guys probably want to get out of here, but I am available for some questions and answers if that's something that you'd like to participate in. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. It's such a big room. And then we got I'll be around. I'll be lingering around, so you can kind of grab me and we'll talk. All right, thank you so much, everyone.